I'm Don Law Green, and I joined the Navy in 1940. I thought I was interested in, as my neighbor was in the Coast Guard, and going to sea would be a great thing to do. And I joined the Navy and signed in July of 1940 for 6 years. And from there I traveled with other recruits to gather aboard the USS Paro to go around the coast to be assigned to other ships. And in this tour, we learned to do various Navy activities like splicing line and doing Navy other activities on the ship. As we went around through the Panama Canal, we were given a choice to stay on board the USS Paro, 6 sailors. My twin brother was with me. He'd joined the Navy with me. And I decided that was a good deal. I was already on the ship, and I'd stay on the Paro. And I stayed with it and went through the Panama Canal and up the west coast. The remaining number of the 250 sailors were all sent to different commands, in particular the Chicago and the Saratoga. This is a request made by the Admiral from Pearl Harbor to the President for more sailors for the ships out on the west coast. After getting settled, the ship getting settled, and all the sailors left it except this we 12. We went to Bremerton, and then we went to the East Coast and back again, and then to Pearl Harbor with a load of ammunition for the USS Nevada. And during this time, between my joining the Navy and reaching Pearl Harbor, I had trained to run a winch to load and unload these 14-inch shells we were going to pass on to the Nevada Monday morning. As it was, I was a third-class petty officer, and I was assigned as petty officer to watch on December 7th, 1941. And my first assignment as a petty officer to watch, and it was on that particular day. Everybody went on liberty. Everybody that could go went on liberty. And after my watch was over, I hit the sack and had the privilege of sleeping in. Suddenly, that Sunday morning, it seemed like all hell broke loose. We're hearing all this noise and everything else and blaming the Army for doing their practice bombing, when in fact, it was the Japanese. And we were totally surprised at this affair, not knowing what was going on, not knowing there was such a thing as a war being started. Being the ammunition depot, about all we could see was the smoke and hear the noise. About 25 minutes later, 4 planes attacked my ship. They swooped down to strafe us, and 3 of them remained in that position, but the 4th one took a long swing around and turned around and came down the ship from the bow to the stern. And as it came down there, I could look up, and I had grabbed the position to be on a 3-inch anti-aircraft gun as a gun captain. And the plane came down, looked up there, and I could see this Japanese pilot. He had a red scarf, and I recognized him. And the bomb bay doors opened up, and the bomb came out, and I started to run from my station, which of course is not the thing you should do, but then what is this? What is happening? And I was quite scared. I got back on my gun, the bomb dropped, blew up the dock, missed the ship by 10 feet, scared everybody below decks, more so than they scared me. Plane continued in its path, and we had machine guns, which we had acquired 3 months prior, and they were able to hit this plane, and it went down in fire. We were credited with the 1 plane. After they went down, there was still a lot of excitement going on, and eventually things quieted down, and GQ was stopped. We all went back to a normal day, and to our station, do what we had to do. But during the night, things got kind of rough. The USS Houston asked for firearms because they wanted to repel boarders. We were thinking we thought they were going to land. The troops were going to land. The Japanese were going to land. However, that didn't happen. We remained at the West Lock, at the ammunition depot, after we moved from the dock that had blown up out to a buoy. And from there we left in 4 days after Pearl Harbor. And while at sea, 3 days at sea, we were attacked by a Japanese submarine. And that submarine fired 2 torpedoes at us, and we zigged instead of zagging, and the torpedoes went parallel to the ship. And when we fired our 5-inch gun, which they didn't know we had as a cargo ship, it dove, and that was the last we saw of that submarine, and we continued on to Mare Island, California. I remained on the ship for a considerable number of months, years, I guess maybe a couple of years, till I think 1943, if I remember right, when Roosevelt put out an order that brothers had to be split. So my twin brother stayed on board, and I left there to carry on and go to other ships. And I went to the Baby Flat Tops in Astoria, Oregon. And I remained on took a flat top there, and instead of going out and fighting the Japanese, we went to Oakland, California, loaded up with P-38s and Cosmoline, and went to Australia, to Townsend, Australia, and offloaded these planes. And on the way back, I was given a choice to stay on board or go take another ship in commission so that he could upgrade someone else, because he could only have one shipfitter on board, shipfitter first class on board. And I selected to take this choice to go to another aircraft carrier. The one I left eventually got tangled up with the Japanese down near Guadalcanal, and several sailors in the repair crew, of which I was a member, were killed by going from the repair station to the hangar deck by the after elevator, and the bomb killed every one of them. And it was many years before I found out when my shipmates, this happened to my shipmates some years later. I remained in the Navy. I stayed in the Navy, several ships. I traveled to the East Coast and the West Coast, to China, and back and forth, and retired out of the Navy after 20 years.